developmental sequence. And I used 3 exercises, one of which was the heart-focused breathing and quick coherence technique. The second was what I call powering up, and I did a little workbook on that. And it's really your basic either Tai Chi or Reiki. It's really just fun ways for teenagers to get in touch with their energy field and to feel the field and to be able to absorb and project energy and all that and help them in that way. They realize it's very empowering for teens, and they realize that they, and so I was studying, and then the last, let me just say it this way. The last exercise was a 20-minute deep relaxation guided imagery with healing light. And what I did was I tested the kids before and after 4 sessions with the Beck anxiety and the Beck depression for youth tests. And then before and every session of the 4 sessions with a visual analog scale for them to measure their level of depression and anxiety. I got really good results on the first 30 kids. And I'm assuming once we analyze the other data as well, we'll get really good results. And what it shows is that in 4 sessions, you can move the needle on depression and anxiety in teens, where with, I didn't compare it to other therapies, but we do know from the research that cognitive behavioral therapy takes about 12 sessions to move the needle. So it's not instead of any other therapy, but as an adjunct with, and it's fun and they like it, and it helps them move the needle rather quickly. So they feel that they can control their anxiety and their depression and their anger and their moods. And they have a lot, it's very empowering and it's fun. They like doing it.
This is really important because in the US, adolescent anxiety and depression has been called a crisis. And I know it is in other parts of the world. And Rajni teaches adolescents. So I'm thinking this might be interesting to you as well to look at her research. And
yes.
Do you find that, I think you're muted, Rajni. Do you find that your students have anxiety and depression as well, or is it a Western kind of phenomena?
No, I mean, it's everywhere. Yes, I mean, the adolescents, they are going through, that phase where they don't know what is going to happen next. So, what the future holds. So be it in terms of, career choices or in terms of relationships. I mean, nothing is certain in the world nowadays. And, when I say that in India, given the population, I mean, the number of opportunities that one has is much less compared to, I guess, the developed, compared to probably US. So their anxiety is even more that you have to be, better than the competition if you have to really make something of yourself. So that way, they are anxious. So that way, yeah, thank you. So that way it becomes important that yes, students, children, adolescents, they know how to deal with their anxieties. So, I mean, a few years back, we had a movie, which actually taught a very simple thing that, you need to keep telling your heart that all is well, from time to time. To calm their anxiety.
3 Idiots.
3 Idiots.
Yes. So,
all is well.
All is well.
All is well. Yes. Yeah. So
sometimes India, we go back and forth to India very frequently, except for COVID. And when I was there is a pumpkin house, which is an orphanage and a school. And the principal asked me to come and teach the children there, the breathing and relaxation and some communication skills. And then I trained the teachers also. And it was, yes, I agree with you wholeheartedly that it's everywhere. It's not, but my study doesn't address the cultural aspects. I think that's another study, but it's really good.
Great. Well, thank you all for being with us. And you may think that that's Rajni's husband, Sandeep, but they did something very clever. I don't know how you did that. He's really in an airplane somewhere.
So I mean, Gayle had told me to, have a picture of him somewhere in the background. So I kind of, try to do something clever. I don't know.
I was
if it's
trying to
working or not.
wave and
Tell me.
wasn't responding.
It's very calm, very relaxed. Okay, so the background of all this is I wrote 50-50 Marriage, one of the early books, not the first, but one of the early books on egalitarian marriages. And Laurel and her first husband, Steve W., were prominent in that book. And I loved Laurel and Steve's methods because they had everything organized. They had meals prepared on Sunday, the family chat, the family clap, the adults moonlight. Let me figure out where that noise is coming from.
You can mute all of us.
Coming from the heart.
I don't really want it.
Meher, who's Meher?
So we did a video on dual career couples.
Meher, it's me, Rajni and Ginny.
Okay. Hi, Ginny. Please mute yourself. For the moment.
Sure, sure.
Hi. Turn on your video. Would be good. Yeah.
Thank you. So we did a video about dual career couples, and that's on my YouTube channel. We have to figure out where that noise is coming from.
Yeah. Ginny, there is a lot of background noise in your. Yeah. Thank you. Thank you.
Okay, so there's a video that has Laurel and first husband featured in it about how to make a dual career marriage work. And then I did 50-50 parenting. And this is an example of a terrible book cover. It drove me crazy because no little baby sits straight like that. And they're like Boston yuppies, which is even a circle pin. I really was very unhappy about this cover. And then I wanted to see recently what happened over the years. Do the marriages make it? What makes a happy marriage last over time? So that's the book that all of you are in, except Susan and Larry. And this book is composed of people who had long-term happy marriages. And the way I organized it was the first chapter was research on marital satisfaction. And then Donna Eden and her husband, David Feinstein, did a chapter on how to deal with conflicts. They're an interesting couple because they're really opposites. They're opposite in every way. He's a PhD psychologist, intellectual, calm, cool, and collected. She's a bubbly, fiery, emotional, and they drove each other nuts. So they developed this kind of system that is in the second chapter. And then I organized the chapters by our major challenges. So children and in-laws, cross-cultural marriages, opposites attract, physical and emotional challenges. And then the last chapter was teen lovers. And actually Laurel and Steve were teen lovers and met when they were 15 and 16. So you kind of fit in different categories, which we'll find out later. And what the egalitarian couples emphasized was I married my best friend. And that communication is really important. So one of those husbands who'd been married for 18 years said, not being afraid to talk about things carries a vitality in itself. That's what a relationship is about and what keeps it meaningful. Communication is the heart of it. So that was really the emphasis in the egalitarian couples interviews. And then with these people with the long marriages who didn't have kids at home anymore, their emphasis was on forgiveness, compromise, patience, understanding, that kind of thing. And then I wanted to just say a background about marriage in the Western world. The best estimate is that 45% of marriages in the US will end in divorce. And about 1/3 of the marriages in the UK and over 1/3 of Canadian marriages will end in divorce. So obviously that's a huge issue. It's an issue for the divorcing adults and for their children. And we know that boys who are growing up without a close contact with their father get into a lot of trouble. Warren Farrell writes about the boy crisis. A large survey of couples in the US in 2020, 29% said their marriage was in trouble, but 40% said their marriage was in trouble the previous year. So marriage rates are down, divorce rates are down, but a lot of people are not getting married. 1/3 of adults or people 15 and over have never been married, and 28% of all households are single person household. So I think Warren Farrell makes the point that in order to solve the boy crisis, we need to have men in the home with their children, which means we need to learn how to communicate and solve problems and how to make a marriage work over time. Rajni, could you say a word about the divorce rate in India is very low. It's a tiny percent. And sometimes that's because the marriages are unhappy, but there's social pressure not to divorce. But are there other reasons you think that marriages last longer in India?
Yes, I would like to say that. I mean, one thing is that there is a lot more patience. There is a lot more feeling that we are going to make it work. You can say that it is probably because of the social pressure, but even otherwise also, people are not ready to give up on the first instance of trouble or so you. Right from the beginning, you are mentally prepared that yes, there would be issues that, so all our movies emphasize that, the mother-in-laws are bad and, so in-laws are like that. And so even the boys, they know that, you are not going to get along with your in-laws. So one kind of walks into marriage with all these, beliefs and knowing that to have a happy and successful relationship, you will have to work out on these issues. So, that idea that yes, this is something that you can walk out on is not there initially. I'm not saying that divorces don't happen, but they happen only when things really go out of hand, or there are things that can't be worked out, but not for the smaller things. A lot of people work out some way or the other, and in this case, like you are trying to help people, so in the society, they will look to, older people, look to friends and, who have been able to, overcome their issues and differences, and that kind of help kind of arrives also. So people listen to each other and try to work out in some way or the other. So I think that helps.
There was a couple that I interviewed in Zimbabwe, and what he said that I thought was so brilliant is that the families pick mentors like a godparent, and they help them prepare for marriage, for marital sex, for how to resolve conflicts. If something comes up during the marriage, you talk to your mentor, you're kind of like your godparent. And I think it's so wise to build in that support system, because there's inevitably going to be conflicts, and it helps to have someone that cares about you, is older and wiser, and you can talk with. What I'd like to ask each of the three couples is, what originally attracted you to each other? And then why did you decide to get married? I'm asking that because a lot of therapists find that what originally attracted people to each other later repels them, and that we often pick people who have opposite characteristics so we can learn balance. The voice dialogue therapist Hal and Sidra Stone call it the disowned self. We attract the disowned self so we can integrate it, or what Carl Jung called the shadow. So why don't we start with Robin and Jim in Myrtle Beach, because you've been married 39 years, so you're our oldest, wisest.
Oh. And
Wow.
just let me say before, and then you go.
Okay.
And then I'll come back to me, but talking about mentor, when oh, well, I'll let you do it.
Okay.
Go.
No, go ahead.
No.
Marriage in action.
Go ahead.
When we were, this is 21 years ago, we had a very tough, rough couple of years. And we went to India, and we have a mentor that you were talking about. I would call him Uncle, and Bauji. And we got there, and it felt like we were battle scarred, just, whimpering into the office, dragging, just barely hanging in there. And he immediately was all over us like, oh, what a perfect couple. You guys are doing wonderful. And we're like looking at each other going, bonkers.
Really?
But it was like exactly what we needed. It was like boost of confidence. And that started the part of the whole time we were there. We were staying out at a retreat, and they had just had a film of Robin was in this film from years and years and years ago.
1976.
This was her movie star time. And people would come up to her and go, you were in that movie, real famous thing. So there was a bunch of people who were there that were younger than us, from the Sahabas. And we were sitting there eating, and somebody came up to us and goes, how is it that you guys, you're the perfect Baba marriage? It's unbelievable. You're the perfect marriage, and you're the longest marriage. And I'm like, this is totally, it's the biggest joke, because we just went through this huge, intense year or so. And I said, no, the Taishmans over there, they're been married longer than we have. No, but you're the perfect marriage. And like, what is going on here? But it helped give us the confidence. It's like, come back, get a proper perspective. It's not all lost. You're not in the quicksand. It's okay. And I don't know about Robin, but I know it helped me in like saying, yeah, you can carry on. It may feel at times like it's hopeless, but it's not hopeless, and it made a big difference. So that you just mentioned that, it reminded me of that whole incident.
But do you think you attracted your disowned self, your opposite, in some ways to learn balance?
I think there are so many levels of that. I think that's too simplistic, because there's so many multiple aspects of our personalities that need balance. And I think that inevitably, over the years, a lot of these things are going to be back and forth, give and take, those personality tendencies. So some of them may seem opposite, but I don't, but to me, that's too simplistic. It's just different personality aspects And again, the lesson we got was, what's the perfect marriage? And the incident that we heard was somebody asked the spiritual master, what's the perfect marriage? And he pointed to this couple. He goes, but Baba, they're always bickering. He goes, sandpaper. And it's, in the sense that you're asking that question, that aspect of marriage is a wearing down of one's ego to the point that you're pretty much at the doorstep of liberation, and it just happens to be you're married to somebody, help each other get worn down so you're soft enough to be able to do that, because it is all give and take.
So let me add to what Jim is saying and also answer a little bit more directly,
Yeah.
Gayle.
Sorry.
What you've
it's perfect.
asked. Because there is this, our marriage really goes back to when we were in our early 20s. And we both had started following an Eastern master. I was 18 and Jim, you were about 19, I think, when we started, 18, yeah. And then we met in a spiritual center, and we were friends for a very, very, very long time. So we have that in common. So that's one of the things that, the glue that holds us together is our spiritual approach and our values. But I'm also a therapist. And so we know that on a personality level, what you're saying is really true in the sense that I'm the oldest in my family, and the oldest child, and I was like the super responsible leader of the children, caretaker of the younger children kind of thing. And Jim was the youngest in his family, and he was like the puppy dog, the kind of playful puppy dog. Oh, that's not a bad thing.
No, it's good.
It was like he could really play.
He still can.
And he still can. And I end up, feeling very responsible and handling everything. So what I needed to learn from Jim was to lighten up, to be able to play, to let go, not feel that everything was going to crash around me if, because I always felt like my parents, I had to be the adult in the room. And so
You're still learning.
I'm still learning that. I just turned 70, guys. I'm still learning that. And then so from a psychological point of view, we also, there's aspects of relationships that you want to complete, like parental. So in some ways he has aspects of my mother. In other ways, he has aspects of my father. I'm sure that, there are times when he responds to me and I have to say, I'm not your mother, but I am very nurturing. And so, you kind of, he felt abandoned by his mother. So he married a very nurturing, caregiving person. And then, there's past life aspects and karma and stuff. So we don't know. We don't really know those things, but we know they're there.
Right.
So yes, working those out together. But what helps is being aware of those things and not blaming each other. Like if he manifests to me in a way that like a parent that I would have a negative reaction to, is I have to be enough aware of my own responses and my own triggers to not project it onto him, just to say, okay, he is the catalyst for that, but it's the inner work that I need to do, and not blame each other. And then we become partners. We become two rivers that become one, flowing towards the source.
What about both of you had short, especially Jim, short marriages previously to your marriage. And I'm guessing that you learned what you didn't want to do the second time.
You want to say something?
I go ahead, because
No, just say it short.
you
You don't
know,
have to tell the whole
that
story.
first marriage was an impulsive thing, and the lesson was, don't be so impulsive, because it was, the consequences are quite big. But it was, yeah, I mean, that was the biggest thing, is don't act out on impulses. Don't act on impulses, even though they can be terribly strong. Have more discernment and, balance it more with your head. Keep yourself out of trouble. I mean, I was warned before I even met the person by a psychic who I didn't ask. It was just a friend who, as I was walking out the door, said a couple of things to me that were totally out of the blue. And one of them was, don't get married till after you graduate. And I went, okay, well, I didn't do that. I did get married before I graduated.
This
And
is
it
from
turned into a
chiropractic,
holy disaster. Sorry?
from chiropractic school.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
And so, the lesson was, for me, I guess it's just, first of all, listen to people who know more than you do. and don't act out on impulses, no matter how strong they are, without having some discernment. But I'm still learning that one.
Got it. Robin, what did you learn from your first?
Well,
marriage?
I learned that you should marry your best friend, is what I learned, because what I did when I was young, when I was 23, was I married a man who was 14 years older, who was essentially a mentor. And I'm glad that I married him. It was a very karmic relationship. The relationship between him and me became very toxic, but I had a very strong link to his parents, and actually was able to be with his mother when she died at home when she was like 97. So, and he also died. My ex-husband died in the car accident. But I was young and I wanted to get married, and everyone else was getting married, and so I did that. But I didn't recognize, as Jim said, you have to use your discernment. And my discernment was that, it wasn't what it was, with Jim. We knew each other. We were friends from 1975 until we got together in 1981. We were really good friends. And I like what Rajni, I'm sorry. Rajni said, which is very true in India, is that, you marry somebody, and before you get married, they do all the family things. They do, the astrological signs and the background, and make sure that it's a good match that way. And then you marry someone and the attitude is different. The attitude is, this is my husband, this is my wife. And so then you adjust. Then you adjust your egos, and you learn how to adjust, where we definitely didn't do that the first marriage. We came from a different point of view, younger, more immature. I didn't have the emotional maturity. But with Jim, he was my best friend. So no matter what we go through, we always have that friendship.
Right. Yeah, that's what the 50-50 marriage people said. Okay, let's go to our second longest marriage, Laurel and Steve. And there we go. So your story is interesting because you were teen sweethearts, both married other people, and then somehow magically found each other while Steve was in England and Laurel was in Northern California. So what was that journey about?
I think we weren't ready when we were in our early 20s, but we never forgot about each other. We still felt the connection, and we managed to get in touch with each other every 7 years or so. It nearly happened, every 7 years, until it finally did happen.
Why did you marry your first wife, Steve?
I'm still not sure. I wasn't really interested in getting married. I think I did it because we'd split up and then we got back together, and it seemed, I wanted to try and make it work. And that was a sort of pattern throughout my first marriage, that we would split up and then we would get back together again, until eventually, I really had enough of that pattern.
Mm-hmm. Laurel, tell us your story.
So Steve and I met when we were, teenagers in high school in 1966. We're just a little bit older than you, Robin, by a year. And, but we didn't marry until 30 years later in 1996, having had these early marriages. And I would say for me, I related to what Jim said, that it was impulsive, even though I was old enough for it not to be. I was in my late 20s at the time, but also and as Robin said, my friends were getting married, and I'd sort of thought when I went to college I'd meet, Mr. Right, didn't. And it was an impulsive marriage. It just lasted for, 15 years and resulted in 2 children. And I think for a long time we ran the marriage, we ran like a business. And the systems that you're talking about, Gayle, my husband was a project manager, and that was a really helpful skill. And with 2 demanding careers and 2 young children and a house and aging parents, those skills were tremendously helpful. And we did have business meetings every weekend. And I'm proud of the way that we managed our marriage and home. But the emotional and spiritual and psychological fulfillment that I felt with Steve from when we were kids, literally, the connection, and that I still feel, and I feel confident that I'll feel for the rest of our lives together, wasn't there. I think our other skills compensated for that. I don't regret the marriage. I certainly don't regret my 2 kids. Steve and I got together when our children, it was a blended family, and they were age 5 to 15, 3 boys, and the oldest was a girl, my daughter. That was really challenging, but I think what we brought to our marriage was, and I'm going to go back to what Rajni talked about, it was unconditional love and commitment to the marriage. We were going to make it work. We were going to do whatever we needed. We were going to get whatever help we needed to make it work, because we were committed to each other. Whereas I think my first marriage, and I think maybe to some extent the Western approach, and particularly US and instant gratification, and if it works out, we'll do it. If it feels good, we'll do it. It was conditional. And I think it was complicated for us by entering into those relationships in the 60s and 70s, which was a time of turbulence. It was open marriage, free love, love, sex, rock and roll, or drug, sex, rock and roll, all of which were factors in that impulsive decision. And I don't think that's particularly conducive to a healthy marriage or couples staying together.
So pot and alcohol were kind of a glue for you and Steve W.
not the only glue, but it was definitely part of the glue that kept that marriage, that was a bond in the marriage initially and kept the marriage together.
And then what was the incentive to get clean and sober?
So, my midlife crisis was wanting a divorce, connecting with Steve again, wanting a divorce from my first husband. So at least I had a chance for the kind of relationship I realized I deeply yearned for, and choosing to I would rather have at that point been a single parent and unmarried for the rest of my life than be with someone I truly felt unhappy with at that point in my life. And I went to, let's see, I think I was convinced by a wise elder that I owed it to myself and my children and my late first husband to clean up my own act before, creating chaos and loss in my family. So to be honest, I got clean and sober as a prerequisite to getting divorced.
No, it makes sense. It makes sense. And then now you all are grandparents, which is pretty exciting.
Right.
Yes.
And so are Robin and Jim. They raised 4 boys and have 2 grandkids. Okay, thank you. Let's go to Rajni and her beautiful husband, and tell us about your story, why you decided to get married to Sandeep.
Like it was an arranged marriage initially, but I would come to the question as to what attracted us to each other and have kind of kept us together is there would be times when like my kids, they would ask that had you guys met in college, what would have happened? And we both ended up saying that we wouldn't really have talked to each other because we were different types. But still, what attracted us, yes, Gayle, like you said, that he's very good looking. So for me, that was one of the factors, one major factor. Second is that he respected me a lot. I mean, love and respect, that is what actually, brings you together. That when you respect each other as people, that is a big glue. And like you are saying that opposites attract, I don't think that opposites can actually work together, because finally at the end of the day you have to have common ground to be able to make a relationship work. So your values need to be very similar. The things that you believe in need to be very, very similar, so that you can because it's a relationship of a lifetime. Opposites can attract for a very short period of time, but then you get tired of it, because at home you cannot wear a persona all the time. When you are with a person who is opposite in character, you are always trying to be someone other than who you actually are. So I mean, one of the things that has made us great friends is that yes, we are at in lots of things we are very alike. And to be with each other is not a strain, not a burden. You can just be yourself. So home is like that relaxing place where you don't have to pretend to be anything other than what you are, right? No persona, nothing. So just, I mean, in fact, I was looking at one of the questions that you had said that about getting bored. And, I was asking Sandeep about this, that, what do you say about this? So he said, but I love getting bored with you. That's what home is all about. That is the that is the place where we should be allowed to be bored. We look forward to getting bored with each other, because both of us have busy professions, and in your professional life all the time you are up and you are dealing with challenges. So you come home so that you can be easy, relaxed, and bored with each other. So because boredom is the beginning of creativity and happiness and everything else. So I think boredom is something that is very underrated nowadays. So I mean, if you ask me one thing, I would say that, leave us excitement. Don't look for excitement, look for someone that you can be bored with.
In a peaceful way. Interesting. What most couples find the most challenging part of their marriage is having kids. For you, I think one thing that made it a lot easier is that your father-in-law lives with you and he's been great. But would you agree with that kids are a challenge for a marriage or not?
Yes, they are a challenge in the sense that, suddenly, and we had kids very, very soon after we got married. So it's like, you are trying to come to terms with each other, and then, kids also enter the equation. So a lot of imbalance can be created. But like I said, that, my father-in-law, he was a great support, and he was he had a lot of calming influence also. So not just in the sense of, helping with the kid, but in the sense that, whenever we would be upset with each other or for anything, he would be the person that we would kind of, go and, take out our frustration. And he would say such, calming things that, we would be settled. And so when we talk to each other next, instead of fighting about what happened the previous day, we would be, ready to make the next day work. So that was really helpful. And children, yes, now when I look at people, they feel like a lot of work, but I don't know, maybe my kids were easier to, bring up or whatever. I mean, they have been two great souls that have come into our life, and they're really good. And now that they're teenagers, I mean, I listen to how teenagers are challenging, but believe me, now they are my best friends. And they are the ones who, give me advice. I know at times unsolicited also, but but they are there, and I like it that we are able to talk to each other for anything and everything. So I go to them for advice, and they come to me for advice. So that way, I think we have a very, very comfortable relationship, in the sense that I now feel that I'm the voice in their head. That whenever they are in a situation, in a tough situation where they have to make a decision, they always think in terms of what would mother say or what would father say if they were in that situation, and their decisions are based on that. So I see that as highly successful parenting, and I'm actually happy about it.
Right. And it's interesting as a teacher that your teaching skills and your parenting skills reinforce and build on each other.
Yeah, it really helped me a lot. In fact, I mean, because in school also, I mean, I'm dealing with adolescents and, mentoring adolescents. So I really realized that, adolescents have lots of issues that they want to talk about. So if you can give them a patient hearing and, help them see, they're confused about what is it that they want to do. So if you can help them see the right direction, so I have lots and lots of students, who are connected with me over the years, so even now, I mean, after many, many years, students would come up, and whenever they are in that decision-making process for the next thing, after graduation, maybe post-graduation, after college, for job. So they come back for, that kind of chat. And so when my kids were younger, they used to be very, sometimes jealous also. They used to say that, mom, you love your students more than maybe you love us. So, but now I think they realize that, I mean, it's a different relationship, and they also love and respect me for that, I'm very committed to my job also, and I take it, very religiously.
Sandeep is an architect. Is he able to do a fair amount of work at home? I think he did during COVID. Is that correct?
Yeah, I mean, yes. No, I mean, Gayle, like that I came to the US in 2011. So, I mean, he and my father-in-law, my kids were young at the time. So I've always got that kind of support from, my both of them, that they were the ones who said that, don't worry, we'll take care of the kids. You go, it's important for you. So that kind of support is very important. So maybe on a day-to-day basis, my school starts early in the morning. So getting the kids ready for school, taking them to the bus. So it's not as if we have to sit and talk out that, this is the work that you are going to do. No, it automatically happens. We never say, why me? We always say, okay, this work needs to be done. And, whoever is available will do it. So that kind of, there is no fight about why I should do it or why he should do it. Or
So ideally, all married couples would have a wise, caring, loving father-in-law. It makes life a lot easier.
it helped me a lot. Yes.
Yes, he's a sweetheart. Larry and Susan, I don't want to put you on the spot too much, but Susan, you're a therapist. And do you want to comment a little bit about your marriage in terms of what you've heard already, or in terms of your practice?
Yeah.
You're in Georgia.
Right. Hi, Robin. Yeah, Robin and I for a time worked out of the same building here in the Atlanta area. Well, Larry and I met through Match.com, and this is his third marriage. His first marriage was like when he was 18 or
Pretty
19.
brief. It was one of the early marriages, like they talked about, impulsive.
And then he was married for a long time to a woman who died before age 50 from complications of type 1 diabetes. And so he was, a very eligible bachelor at that point in his neighborhood. And he saw the birds circling up there, getting ready to pounce on him. And he decided he wanted to pick who he was going to marry. So at one point he had 17 dates in 15 days.
Just coffee, conversation.
And at one point I had been on Match.com for almost a year, and my year was about up, and I thought, well, this hasn't paid off yet, so I don't think it's going to happen. And I was going to get off, and then something happened that had never happened before. I got 2 emails from Match saying, hey, you should look into these 2 people. And he was one of them. And so we met. This isn't really about a relationship, it's just how we got started. We met for dinner, and we went for a walk afterwards. It had been raining, and he told me about his wife had just died the previous September, and this was in June of the next year. And I went home and I thought, well, this is never going to work because he hasn't finished grieving yet. And, but we just kept seeing each other. And one of the things that happened that was very interesting, Larry can tell you more about this, is so that first date was really good. And I got into this alternating thing. One date would be good and the next date would be bad. I did not have a good childhood. And so I had the desire for closeness, but I also had the fear of closeness.
Avoiding attachment.
They alternated that way all along. And you want to say something now?
Well, you want me to comment on it? One of the reasons that I kept on dating Sue and sort of stopped the what do you call it? The really fast dating where you just have a real
Speed
quick,
dating.
what's that? It was almost speed dating, where I'd meet somebody with coffee, spend about an hour talking with them, and then not quite speed dating, but similar. But my early marriage did build a really good sense in me of red flag, in relationships.
Definitely.
I would shop for my next relationship, and very carefully. And so in dating Sue, a lot was going for it. Our values were really similar. We both had what I view as good intellects, good knowledge base. The one thing that would have been a red flag is the alternating, very calm, very nice, and insane. But I realized that as soon as I would talk to her about it, she would be willing to talk about it. It would, and we could talk it through. And I was like, well, I can work with that. I'm not looking for perfection. I'm looking for somebody that I can build a relationship with. And if I have to, if I have to ask, hey, what brought that on? You want to talk about it a little bit? If I had to do that, that's fine. I'm 70 years old and was 54 at the time and had been through a lot of interactions with people. And I knew if you could do that, if you can talk about it, then things aren't going to go totally south and get toxic.
Well, what kind of work have you done, Larry, in your life?
Oh gosh. Oh man, I've had 4 different careers and probably a dozen different jobs. I'm from a really highly working class background. My family was very poor. I just started working in factories and cold storage warehouses and stuff out of high school. Then I went to college, became didn't finish at that point, but went into computers. I became a software systems engineer, even though I didn't have the degree. And then I shifted into journalism, and I'm the editor of a local news site, editor and publisher. So that's a quick summary.
Got it. Sue, do you want to say a word about what you see in your clients who have marriage issues? Are there patterns that you see in terms of what works and doesn't work?
Well, the first thing that comes to mind is, most men, it's my observation, at least among a clinical population, most men don't want to talk about things. But what really kills me is when a couple comes in and the man wants to talk about things, but the woman doesn't. Somehow he's managed to find someone, here's this great opportunity, a man who wants to talk things out. And somehow he manages to find a woman who doesn't want to do that. Since the pandemic struck, I really haven't been doing not very much couples therapy at all. I have a guy who's just really stuck, and his wife sends me letters about how awful he is. And anyway, but they're both really stuck. There is no doubt about it. I don't know. I'd rather talk more about Larry, actually.
Well, let's see if there's anyone else who is in that we don't know. Angela or Sutherland Center or Renew that has anything they would like to share. If you do, you could just raise your hand. And if not, what I'd like to address next is how you deal with conflict, what causes it, and how you work it through. Because it's inevitable, 2 imperfect human beings are going to have conflict, and people who aren't able to work it through get divorced. So what have you found as a couple and in your practice causes and resolves conflict in a way that's reaffirming to the relationship?
I'll pipe in, or did you want someone not on the panel?
No, go ahead, Laurel, that's fine.
definitely the most challenging time in our marriage was the early years when we were working on blending our family with Steve's
Right.
two kids when they moved. He moved back to California from England, and I had my two kids. And what helped us, and you know, by the way, my first husband was in that category that Susan described. I think we had therapy for about 30 minutes. I mean, I'm not joking. I think he walked out of the first session. He didn't want to talk about it. And fortunately, Steve and I, you know, just like we kind of serendipitously got back connected together again, we also fairly serendipitously ended up in a wonderful class of other couples working on blended family issues through a local family service association. And it was literally a flyer that my best friend saw on a kiosk in downtown Palo Alto. And she knew from my talks with her that we were struggling with some issues, you know, relative to our exes and who had what authority over what kid, and did we back each other up, and all of those issues. So we took this series of classes, and then we periodically saw a facilitator who had led the classes in family therapy, you know, with each other, sometimes with one of the kids, over a period of quite a few years. And she gave us some conflict resolution steps, which we followed very religiously. You know, how to put the issue in the box and then wait until we calm down, have a peace offering, then a structure for sitting down and doing active listening. And those sessions, I still have notes from them, and they lasted for hours. We had to wait until we had a full afternoon. And, you know, as is often the case, the arguments were usually about something other than the subject of the argument. There was usually an underlying issue. And
often the question, what's the real issue here? Yeah.
right. So, you know, it wasn't easy. And I'm not sure we would have made it through those early years without the help of this, you know, really wise counselor. And the two lessons I remember her teaching is, don't automatically assume that every issue you have as parents with your children is because you're a step family. Some of it is just plain family issues. It's hard raising kids, raising a house of 4 kids, raising teenage kids. I guess that was, and then having a structure and a technique to follow to work through the conflicts. And I'm still a big believer in active listening. And I think being a really good listener is a very simple but difficult skill that I imagine I will be practicing for the rest of my life.
So when I think of active listening, I think sounds like you're feeling frustrated because blah, blah, blah. And the other person can say, well, no, it's really because of blah, blah. Oh, you're feeling because. And,
Right.
and then the other part of it that I think is important is asking for or suggesting a specific solution that can be negotiated. So I'm feeling frustrated because the dishes never get done. The kitchen is a mess. Maybe we could do family cleanup. Is that a fair summary of active listening?
I think so. I mean, definitely it ended with brainstorming, sort of a green light session, brainstorming possible solutions, agreeing on one or more of them. But it still astonishes me how difficult it is, even with people you love and are in general agreement with, to feed back to them in a way that they feel is accurate, an accurate representation of what they just sat in front of you and told you.
Right.
So that's the essence of it, that, you know, Steve would say something to me and I'd say, you know, this kind of cliche, what I hear you say is, and then I would restate it in my words. And it often took 2 volleys for me to actually get it right to his satisfaction. So he felt like I heard him. And the power of truly being heard is I think transformational in a conflict. You don't need to agree with each other. You don't even need to endorse the other's opinion, but you do need to hear each other. And I think it's sometimes can be very hard to do.
Could you go through the steps a little bit with more explanation? You put it in the box. Why, if you can, you could think of maybe a specific disagreement and how you worked it through. Like, I don't know, the kids aren't doing their chores or their
Let me
homework.
try to think of our last argument that resulted in a bit of a blow up. Steve, what was the issue? And I came into the kitchen and I said I didn't like what you said or done, and you didn't like the way I said that. What was that about? Does that sound familiar?
We
You
don't
remember?
have that many conflicts lately.
The
Since
kids
the kids
aren't at
left
home.
home.
Oh man.
Sounds really familiar.
Yeah, let's hear from another couple, and I know it'll come to me in a minute.
Well, then, if you don't have an example, just do the steps. So you put it in the box. What does that mean?
We feel things escalating. We feel the temperature rising, the voices getting more agitated and angry. And one of us says, let's put it in the box. And that could be literally writing down what the topic is and putting it in a box, but usually it's metaphorical. And we agree to kind of shake hands and put the issue aside with a commitment to talk through the issue when we are both feeling calmer, usually the next day. So I know some couples say never go to bed angry with each other, always work it out before. You know, I'm more of a morning person. Probably it's not a good idea for me to try to work something out at 10 p.m.
Yeah.
So that I can go to bed. You know, I'll go to bed angry if we do that. And sometimes it takes a couple of days or sometimes a week, but it's a commitment to address the issue as long as it takes to figure out what the underlying thing is that caused the other person to react in a way that is all out of proportion to what the supposed apparent topic of the conflict was about.
And then you do the active listening while you're doing the discussion.
Yes.
Right.
And then you brainstorm solutions.
Yeah.
And Danny had some kind of technique he learned at camp or something.
Yes.
What was that
Yeah.
one?
It was, he went to super camp one summer when he was, I think, in high school. It was OTFD, open the front door.
Open the front door.
And it was just something, it was a study skills class because he wasn't doing that well in school. It was supposed to be an enrichment thing to help him do better in the next academic year, but they invited parents to join them. And it's something I still use. This is from 20 years ago, and it's just a way to clarify. Kind of have a cleaner conversation. It's really abbreviated. O is for observe. I observe, XYZ, just objective journalistic. I think, I observe you really raising your voice. I think what made you angry was, what I said to you when I came into the kitchen. F, OTF. I feel anxious. I feel really attacked and a little emotionally unsafe when you get angry at me like that. D, my desire is that we could sit down together when we're feeling more calm and loving and talk through what was really going on there.
And these work. It was they're not just a theory, they work in practice.
No, these do really, those things really did work. Yeah.
Great. Robin and Jim, why don't we go to how you solve conflicts and what causes them?
Okay.
So far, what I'm hearing is some of the things we've done over the years. In fact, I was hearing it, listening and laughing. It sounded awful.
I feel a little embarrassed talking about conflict resolution techniques in an audience of therapists.
Oh, no, absolutely not. I mean, it was like right on. You just push the button. It's like, yeah. You know that one. Yep.
You know,
Absolutely. In fact, I was just commenting to Robin, our oldest son is going through a very rough time with his wife. They've been married 10 years. And I'm sitting here watching this, the whole broadcast and stop it.
your glasses. Thank you.
Give me my glasses back.
Well, he gesticulates with the glasses and then they hit me, so, sorry, honey, go ahead.
Anyhow, the whole conversation along with these steps and things, it just occurred to me, it'd be so helpful if they could listen to it, if they could just hear it. So, over the years, we've done different techniques and different methodologies. And some of them work sometimes, some of them don't. But then, I don't know, I guess the longer we've been at it, the more strategies are under our belt. And as long as we both have the attitude of wanting to communicate and be sincere about it and be open about it, I think we got a shot,
Yeah, maybe we'll stay married. Actually,
I
we
don't know,
got married
maybe.
again. When we were married 25 years, we got remarried. So, but
Same
What are
people,
the specific techniques?
what I wanted to add to what Jim is saying, and this is an interesting thing, because this is a very common thing in our relationship, and it comes from family of origin. And what I'm talking about is the communication skills, active listening, and brainstorming, and all of those cognitive things that we do, I think are really common for everyone. The family of origin issue, which is always interesting, is, again, I come from a family of people who process, and we talk very deeply about how we feel, and we process with each other. Jim comes from a family where their discussions focus on what flavor ice cream do you like? And so, and I kid you not, we went to
that's
Kansas.
not in context.
I know, we went to
Yeah.
Kansas City for a family get together, and they spent 2 hours discussing this ice cream place and what ice cream they like.
It's basically chit chat, it's really just about shopping, golf, ice cream, whatever.
Yeah, it's very, but anyway, so he talks in generalities.
And Robin will go, "How do you feel?" And my family will be like,
Feel?
"What?
What's that?
Fine,
Why are
fine.
you
right?
bringing
You're
that
fine,
up?
right,
Why
yeah,
are you bringing
right,
that? I'm
right.
fine."
Yeah, so,
I'm fine.
or your mother who said when she was alive, "Don't talk to me about that shit." But the reason I bring it up is that he speaks a lot in generalities, and I'm a process person. So that really always adds to our, in the conflict
Our
and
flavor.
how we resolve it. It's like, I'll ask him, we'll try to talk about something, and he'll speak in such generalities. I don't understand what he's saying. I don't know what you mean or how you feel, but I do know that when, something's triggered, he gets upset, and he raises his voice. And I come from a father and a stepfather who were ragers. So that, the raising of the voice by a man is a trigger for me to get scared. So, so with Jim now, as an adult, an older adult, I can say to him, "Don't yell at me," or "Don't raise your voice." A lot of times I'll say, "Don't yell at me." And he'll say, "I'm not yelling at you. I'm just telling you how I feel." Well, to me, those aren't feeling words. He's not telling me. And then I'll say to him, "I don't know how you feel. Don't you want to listen to how I feel?" "Well, I do, but I don't know. So tell me how you feel." So I think those things also are very important. That when your primitive brain, you're in the fight or flight, you can't really cognitively discuss, you can't do the communication that you're talking about. You're in that state where in a way you kind of have to separate. Now, I also have abandonment issues in my family. So when he would get angry and he would say, I can't talk about it now, or leave me alone, let me cool down. When we were younger, I would get scared and I would feel he's abandoning me and I couldn't let it go. I couldn't let him stop. Now we know, take a time out, let him, he's not going to leave. He's going to be there. Let him cool down. Let us get back into our cognitive brains.
We've learned how to articulate in a way that communicates more accurately what's really going on. So in that situation, I knowing her better, I can say, I'm not going anywhere. I just need to cool down because I can't think straight right now.
Exactly.
So
Yeah.
It's that, over a period of time, you start picking up on all these strategies and
we can verbalize in the moment what's going on.
a little more
when
accurately.
you talk to me, it's kind of like, I like that open the front door thing, because when he communicates in a certain tone of voice,
That's a trigger.
it's a trigger for me, and vice versa. If I talk to him the way he perceives that his mother used to, when I met her, she never talked to, wasn't the same person. So I never really saw that part of her that he experienced when he was a child. But if I, talk to him in a certain tone of voice, I become Jean, I become his mother, right? But now we have a sense of humor about it too, and now we can articulate that triggered me. You're acting like, my father, you're acting like my mother. We've got to cool down. We've got to kind of get back to center and not blame each other. So family of origin work is very important in this, as well as the communication of it as well.
I think of it as there's the couple and the ghosts. There's the mother, the father, the siblings, the past relationships, ghosts.
I was just going to mention when she said that, I remember at my mother's funeral, a lot of people came and, everybody was telling their stories about about her. And after a while, I'm going, I don't even know who this lady they're talking about is. It's not the person that I knew at all.
Right.
They're, oh my God, and the reason why I bring that up is because it's very confusing as a son, and bringing that within and then not having it acknowledged in any way. It gets very confusing when you're trying to figure out, why am I reacting a certain way? Why are they reacting to me that certain way? And some of those issues don't even come up because you never had a chance.
And you were a latchkey kid, so
to some point,
to some extent, and so he feels like he wasn't heard. So if I act like I'm not listening to him or I'm not taking what he's saying into consideration, they moved and he never got a voice. If I act that way, we're going to do this, or I'm not listening to you, then he gets angry at me as well. So as I say, family of origin, and of course for the therapists out there, internal family systems and parts work and all, inner child work, all that stuff that we do is really, really important. And then the cognitive part of it is the communication skills, the roles you have in the family, the roles you play in the family as well. Like I was, the fixer, the caregiver, the person. So different roles, they all impact the relationship.
And then there's a whole nother level. This just came up yesterday. I haven't even had a chance to talk to Robin about it. There's this whole other level of, as individuals, we all come in with lessons that we need to learn that lifetime. And part of that lesson is coming through the venue of the marriage.
Yes.
And, you know, that's a whole other layer
Yeah.
that you may or may not be aware of, you know, so.
In the second chapter of this book, Donna Eden and David Feinstein, as I mentioned, tell how to resolve conflict, and they specifically address that issue when you're swamped or can't think rationally, how to get back into your centered space. So they have a very specific 1, 2, 3, 4 kind of process. And they also demonstrate a little bit on my YouTube channel. Thank you. Rajni, it sounds like you all don't have a lot of conflicts, but when you do, how do you resolve it?
No marriage is without conflict, you know. It's there every day. You know, when I was looking at, you know, Laurel and James and, you know, his wife, so I mean, how she was talking about his mother, you know, I could feel that, you know, it was probably triggering him, and you know how. So you know, his family, my family, you know, there are things that, you know, you don't like about them, and you know, there are things that they don't like about. So these kinds of issues are like always there on a daily basis, and you know, about work, about children, about, you know, how. So yes, and you know, Laurel was talking about that, how you should give time out. So I've been on, you know, both sides. When we were younger, what we were talking about, that, you know, resolve your conflict that very night only. So when we are younger, you know, we would be angry, and at that time, instead of talking, if you could kind of, you know, just touch each other, or you know, maybe hug each other and cry, and you know, if I would be frustrated, I would start crying also and all that. So that would help us resolve it, that, you know, maybe, okay, let's put all this aside, you know, this is all negative energy, let's, you know, go to sleep happy, and you know, we'll talk about it when the time comes, right? So that worked. And you know, now that we are getting older, you know, what you people talked about, that giving it time, that yes, when you are angry, don't instead of, you know, just fighting it out at that very moment, that is also a very good idea, that you give it time, you know, just let it be. I mean, I walk out of the room, and you know, probably go and sleep in the living room on the couch. So because, you know, I mean, at 10 p.m. You've had a tough you know, working day, and Sandeep also suffers from high blood pressure. So I know that, you know, he's already, his BP is very high. Why would we want to fight out something that, you know, that we know is not the right time? So we give it time, you know, maybe a day, maybe even 2, maybe even 3. And then, you know, when we are cooled, then we talk about it rationally. And, you know, that really helps and works. And one thing that I learned from Sandeep about conflict is that, you know, he has this very simple way of, what shall I say? Whenever there is an issue or conflict, you know, we start feeling that maybe we don't love each other, or maybe, uh, even if it is about family. But, you know, he has this very reassuring way that, you know, whatever is happening, I love you. So that kind of settles it, that yes, we move on from there. Okay. So if we have that firm faith and belief in each other's love for, you know, each other, then, you know, one has that strength to be able to work out whatever, you know, the conflict is. So over the years, yes, lots and lots of things keep happening. But, you know, we kind of work it out some way or the other.
Would you say that children are the main source of disagreement or not?
I'll not say they are the main source. I'll not say that. I mean, say for example, Sandeep loves home cooked food, right? And we used to cook 3 times a day. And then, you know, when he needs to, I'm just giving an example, that you know, he needs to go to the office, and you know, he would carry his tiffin, and then he would come back and say that, you know, other people are bringing, you know, 2 vegetables, and you know, I mean, all kinds of stuff. And I would say that I have to go to school early in the morning, so I can't really make, you know, that kind of elaborate lunch for you. So then, you know, we would talk about it, and so he said that let's have a cook then, you know. So now with the cook also, after every 6 months or 1 year, the food starts becoming routine, and he would start complaining. So that is kind of a hint for me to start looking for probably a new one. Until I found a new one, I would be telling him that, see how good she is, she comes regularly, or whatever. I mean, and there are times when one is not able to, but one starts reading the signs of the other partner over the years. And with children, we do have disagreements over the children also, but we don't disagree in front of the children. I mean, that is one thing that, we kind of, that even if Sandeep is saying something to one kid, even if I don't agree with what he's saying at the moment, we try to, put up a united front in front of the kids. Because, if I snap at him in front of the child would, snap at me later. So, and, they will feel that, so maybe later we can discuss that, maybe you were harsh with the child, and, maybe you could have, and the next time he would make it up, but never in front of the child. So that is one thing that we kind of observe. So if I'm angry with one of the kids about something, shouting at the child, he would never say that, why you are doing that, and, it's irrational or unreasonable or unfair. And, the kids also take their cue from there. So if they're angry, they will probably just shut up and walk out, and, uh, talk about it later and not shout back. So that has been a good thing that I've learned with Sandeep. Yeah.
Great. Laurel, you have to leave soon. Is there anything that you have buzzing around in your brain that wants to be expressed?
Yeah, it's always helpful to hear, feedback from other people, and sharing of ideas, and even these techniques. And almost everyone has talked about some form of a cooling off period, and that I want to emphasize that. And it doesn't matter, our counselor talked about putting it in a box. I think what's important is that you agree on some, symbolic way of doing that. Because what I do know is that when I am most in danger of a toxic interaction, or argument, or words that I'm going to regret, or that are going to hurt our relationship, is when I'm precisely when I am the least capable of intuitively, instinctively knowing the right thing to do and say. And that is the benefit to me of having these little techniques, or acronyms, or steps, whatever it is. Because then I don't have to rely on my temporarily out of commission, rational, thoughtful, kind, intelligent self. I can just follow what some wiser person tells me to do. I can do this. I can follow 4 steps.
If Whitney, who's now a mother, said, okay, Laurel and Steve, what advice do you have after having raised 4 children? For me, she probably wouldn't do that. But if she did, what would you say? Well, it's really important that you do this and not do that, do this, not do that, in raising the kind of children that you want to give to the world.
To be honest, I mean, she'd have to be begging for advice on parenting for me to give any. I think if I learned any wisdom in preparation for becoming a grandmother, and her son is now 7, and our kids in Ann Arbor, Michigan have 2 much littler ones. That is what I learned, keep your mouth shut, don't offer advice unless they're begging for it. And I don't agree with everything they're doing, and they get all their advice from online. Though generally I think their kids are great, and I think they're doing a good job, and we love being around those grandchildren. So what advice would I give them if they really wanted it? I don't think this is the answer you want, but I really think they have to figure it out for themselves. I think that what works
What
in
did you
our
figure out for you and Steve raising 4 kids? What did you?
I would
learn?
remind them of the things that they kind of were probably vaguely aware that we did. They know that we went to therapy. They know that we sometimes with them went and saw somebody. I guess that would be my biggest advice is if you're running into trouble that you feel in any way threatens the long-term happiness and health of your marriage, frickin' get some help.
And that assumes you can afford a counselor who charges $80 an hour or something.
They all can, and if they didn't, that is, I believe in letting your kids be independent and treating them as equal as possible. That's sure something I'd be willing to pay for if they wanted it. Would not want money to be a barrier.
Yeah.
I'm reminded of my dad telling me, this sort of came into my head because of these questions, that he said, oh, all the arguments I ever had with your mother were about my brother Nigel. We nearly broke up because of his behavior, and our conflict about how to deal with it.
So Steve, what were the kids from 2 different sets of families jealous of each other, competitive, argumentative, or what was it like combining the 2 sets of kids from 15 to, what was it, 5?
I think it was difficult at the beginning, especially with the 2 that were closest in age, like Ben and Danny. I don't think they particularly got on. They had different interests and so on. Whitney and Nico, who's the youngest, and she's the oldest, they got on really well. But people would sometimes think that she was his mother, because he was very small and she was very mature. And she liked playing that role, But yeah, they all get on now. But
Well, what did the counselor advise in terms of how to make harmony in a blended family?
I think, frankly, our biggest issues were with our ex-spouses, not with our kids or among the kids together. And the big rule that we got was, what happens in their house is none of our business. We're in charge of what happens in our house. We don't make the rules for their house. They're not going to get ruined, by rules that we don't agree with or lack thereof. So kind of stick to your.
And I think, my ex-wife was very negative, but we tried to keep to the, we were not negative in response, and we weren't negative about her to our kids.
Yeah, bite your tongue till it bleeds is the phrase I remember going by. There was a book, Mom's House, Dad's House, which we found super, super helpful. That was my, Bible.
Laurel, I know you have a meeting.
Yeah.
So thank you. And
thank you so much. It was really wonderful to meet all of you. And thank you, Gayle, for facilitating that. Since you guys are in the Georgia area, we recently visited Atlanta for the first time, and I would love to go back there. I just loved it. What a great city. So maybe we'll get to meet you in person sometime.
Okay, that would be nice. Great.
Thanks.
So Rajni, why don't you add to the parenting skills?
Yeah, one thing that I really want to say is that it's very important to keep the channels of communications open with the children. So don't be judgmental. So initially, right from the time when they were very young, I have developed this habit in the children that they come back from school and they kind of recall, what happened, what was good, what was bad, and things like that. And even after that, whenever they meet friends, whatever the hot topic of discussion, whatever is going on, even on their Instagram, they share the reels that stand out to them and all that. And I'm never really judgmental, but I kind of talk to them about, what would have happened had I been in that situation. And, so there would be times they would say, oh, you are old fashioned and, maybe, what you are saying is from 30, 40 years ago, whatever. But, it's important that, you allow them to speak. They know that they can say whatever they want in front of you, and that you are not going to, pass a judgment. But in addition to that, they also know that what your position is going to be. So they are listening very carefully when you are kind of, trying to, have a value system clear as to, okay, this is what my value system is. This is what I would like you to think about. So that helps. At that moment, they might, kind of write you off and say, okay, this is, not useful for us, but it stays with them. It stays with them. I feel it's very important, especially when with teenagers.
What I learned from reading like Children the Challenge by Dreikers when I was raising my son and now my grandson is consequences speak louder than words. So they tune out, especially mother voices. But if the consequences need to be clear, if the clothes aren't in the laundry, they don't get washed. If you're not home for dinner, you don't get a warm dinner. And then another book that I really thought was useful was How to Talk So Children Will Listen and How to Listen So Children Will Talk. That had good suggestions for communication. And what I found raising a boy, I think it's different with a girl, is that I can only say a sentence. And then they tune out. So it's like, blah, 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 blah. Have you thought about, and questions, what do you think about da da da? And then that's all he's going to hear.
So boys are, guys of few words. So whatever you have to say, you have to be really brief.
Yeah. Let's see, Robin and Jim, you've raised 4 boys, so I know that you have.
Well, I'm going to piggyback on what she just said about, one sentence. It also came up, it's like when you're talking to one of the kids, I'm going to make a double negative here. Don't say don't as part of your first sentence, because that's all they're going to hear is don't. And then they won't even hear what the don't was about.
Yeah. Yeah.
So it's got to be rephrased, you got to learn how to say what you want in that one sentence.
We have an interesting family structure, so we've had some challenges too. Most of our arguments, though, are not about the kids. Right now, our argument is about, Jim just retired from 22 years of teaching at Life University. And, what we're going to do, how we're going to keep the business, and we're going to move to Myrtle Beach. We're in Myrtle Beach right now at the beach, but we live in Marietta, Georgia. But the challenges that we had our oldest son, who is now 39 and has 3 children, and they live next door to us. So that extended family structure, I really like it because, we're able to help and support them. But when he was a teenager, he got very involved in drugs and was a meth addict for a while. And that was very challenging. And then my sister, I have a half sister who's schizophrenic. And when I was 48, we adopted my biological nephew, who was 2 at the time. Chris, I think Susan might remember from when I was at Concord Road, right? That when we moved to Georgia and he was 2 years old, I was 48, and he's my biological nephew. Well, we didn't know at the time, but now we know he has Asperger's as well. So, and he's 24 now. So the challenge, we went through the drug issues and we went through learning about autism and how to deal with that. And it's been interesting and challenging, you know, those things. But for those things, you know, we are pretty much in sync. But we had to learn how to do, you know, consequences. And probably our worst thing that we've not been as good at is being, you know, firm and consistent and having, you know, strong boundaries. But we must have done something right, because my son now at 39 is wonderful. He is a wonderful hands-on father. He cooks, he cleans, he cares for the kids, he's plays with them, he loves them, he talks to them, he asks them about how they're feeling. So, you know, and we also with our roles, or, you know, whoever, as you were talking about, you know, we don't even have to say who's going to do what. It's like, if the laundry needs to be done, whoever sees that does it. You know, if we need food, whoever sees that does it. You know, we just have that all worked out. So that's good. Good news.
There's hope, guys.
We made a parenting video when I was teaching at Chico State that has little case studies and vignettes. And we had one where the little boy is having a tantrum in the supermarket because he wants treats. And the wrong scenario is the mother goes, okay, you can have the Tootsie Rolls, but don't do it again. And the right scenario is, okay, we're going to leave the supermarket. The consequences and consistency are really important, because otherwise you behavior mod them to have a tantrum if they want Tootsie Rolls. Yeah.
And with an autistic kid that you don't know, because he's very high functioning, he would have meltdowns in the grocery store, but something heavy, like a weighted blanket or something, is very settling to the nervous system. And I would have this heavy pocketbook, and I'd say to him, hold this. And he'd hold my weighted pocketbook. And also we had this snake that was weighted, and he would wear it around his neck. And so restaurants were a challenge, and supermarkets were a challenge, and everything, but
where there's
you're
a
right.
lot of stimulus and
Yeah. So you know, but you're right though, not to give in to the bad behavior, you know, catch them being good, support that, you know, all behavior purposeful.
How did you get your son off drugs? What worked?
Well, we didn't get him off drugs, so that, you know, thinking that we could do anything was not the right approach. But he, you know, we did help him get into treatment, but that didn't work either. I mean, he was in and out. What the final straw was is really setting really, really strong boundaries. And when he was a certain age, he had been in treatment, then he came back and he was living with us. And finally, it really got so bad, we just said, you have to leave. And
Well, what we said was, you either try to help yourself, of which we will give you any support you need. At least you have to try by going to get, you know, some kind of therapy and the drugs if needed be, or we're done. And basically he's refused to even acknowledge that there's a problem. So
no, you're talking about a different person.
who's she talking about?
I'm talking about Josh. When he
Oh,
this is a different son.
wow.
Yeah, no, but it's true.
Yeah,
But
Josh,
anyway,
yeah.
it's similar.
It's the same conversation.
But what I did was we always gave him the phone. He had a phone. He and his friend Jeremy went out and lived in a car for 9 months. And they drove around. I don't know what they did, but we gave him a phone. We paid for the phone. And I said, call me once a week. At least I want to know you're alive. We didn't reject him as a person. And we went to Families Anonymous, which is a good group for the family. It's not, you know, it's tough love kind of approach. And
Well, it's like 12-step.
it is
family,
12-step, but it's for families. And he he found a community that he got involved with, which was very, very structured. And he lived there for free for 2 years. And he got a very strong work ethic. So we didn't reject him as a person, but we definitely set the boundary. We have small children at home. We cannot, that you can't do this anymore. And he did find his way, thank God. And, in Al-Anon, they talk about, the addicted person or the alcoholic has a higher power and we're not it. We're not it. So once we realize we're not it, no, that was the hardest thing as a mother to do, to tell your child that they have to leave. And that was excruciating, but we did it. We had to do it.
Yeah. And it worked.
And it worked.
For him, it worked.
Yeah. Let's see. Renu, are you there? Can you do you have any comments, questions, observations? What about Angela, Jill?
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, I'm pretty much speechless. I will just say that I'm a family therapist.
And
so it's
where do you
wonderful.
live?
Atlanta.
And you're speechless because?
It's wonderful to be around all of these therapists that are working on their relationships, their marriages, working with their children, and seeing the hard work pay off and the techniques, methods, and strategies that we pick up in school and give to our clients every day. So I'm overjoyed and over the moon with the spectacularness of this event.
Great. It's going to be recorded and on YouTube, so it can be shared. Do you want to say a word about your relationship history, patterns, what you've learned?
What I've learned from today, or what I learned
from your life, from your life.
Well, I'm just going to piggyback because so much was said today. I'm going to piggyback on some of the highlights. Adjust your ego, and in conjunction with the shadow work of Jung. I think that's crucially important. I'm a big believer in we choose people in our life that are going to help us develop into where we want to be. Likewise, we attract persons that do the same. I remember in my marriage that my ex-husband could speak boldly to folks. And at that time in my life, I did not know how to do that. And so I would watch him with astonishment when he would confront other humans. Of course, when he came around to confronting me and me having, I think, Jim, your wife's name is Robin? Robin, okay. I was similar with Robin. If you're gonna yell at me, then we're gonna have a problem. So neither one of us knew the difference between yelling and tone and volume and choice of words. And so we had to work that out together. And in our case, we were unsuccessful. But of course, 20 years later, I can see that pattern in couples and in families when I'm working with them. And I can instantly go in there and pinpoint it. So once again, all of these couples that have spoken today have looked at that, adjust your ego. I can also throw in, figure out who you are and that some issues are your problem, and and then take a look at your shadows, and then integrate that with all the conflict resolution techniques that were discussed here. Integrate that, really work on, it's not just Jim and Robin, it's not just this person and that person. We're now a couple, we're now a marriage, we're now a family. So what rules do we make for ourselves and what works for us? I heard that loud and clear during all of the couples discussion.
What patterns do you see in problematic marriages that you work with as a counselor?
Oh, wow. Something that came up today that tickles me greatly. I attract the clients where the male is very emotional.
Mm,
And of course, I hear from the therapeutic community often, women want to talk, women want to share, women cry. That's been the exact opposite
mm,
with the majority of my clientele.
mm.
I've often wondered why, but I've got a few ideas. I mean, my marketing starts off with really speaking to issues that a very sensitive, vulnerable man would pick up on and say to his wife, I'd like to see this particular counselor.
Mm.
So what I see in my particular practice that I think is just through the magnifying glass that I have to use is that when a man, oh wow, now I'll try to be brief on this because we need to get off eventually, but when a male in our society feels deeply and is cognizant of some hurts and some pains that have come from previous experiences, my belief is our society shuns that and puts up really big walls and roadblocks and obstacles and says, no, 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 that is not allowed. And once again, tying it with what I've already said, I find that these men attract women who don't want to. I mean, it was exactly what was said here. Women that don't want to listen, don't want to care, don't want to go deep. And I then have to work repeatedly on breaking those patterns of, why do you think you chose a woman that if you can clearly say to her, I was frustrated when you proceeded in this type of action. I was disappointed when here's a man that can speak. And I've had hundreds of these clients. Here's a man that can speak his emotions, his thoughts, his hurt. And the woman frequently will say back to him very negative, ugly statements out. Let me see if I can find a polite way to say them. None of the ways I can say are polite, but you're too sensitive would be and they say stronger words than that.
Like you're a wimp or something.
Exactly. That's very polite. Thank you, Gayle. So I've had to work really hard with the couples I see and helping the woman get sensitive and vulnerable and willing to share and in touch with her emotions. And that's what I see. So it's way different than what I hear other therapists are dealing with typically.
Interesting. I just did a book called A Global Dialogue on Masculinity. 35 men speak out. And the men discuss that kind of pressure on them not to reveal their emotions. Actually, one of the men in the book, Jack Kammer, suggests what really helps him and his wife if they're having a disagreement is to hold hands. And there's something about just it's like Rajni said, just having a hug, physical touch can be reassuring. Okay, Jill, Angela, thank you very much for sharing. That was thought-provoking. So let's, Sue and Larry wanted to have a last word.
So.
Yeah. I just thought of some other things as people were sharing. One was Laurel talking about what I call the three-way communication. And that you probably all are familiar with this, but let's see, Harville Hendricks's book.
How to
Getting
Get the Love You Want.
It has directions in there for that. And the other exercise I really like a lot is the one where each member of the couple makes a list of what their goals in the marriage. And then you exchange lists and you make a master list of, you take everything off your spouse's list that you agree with and put it on the master list. And you don't worry about the things you don't agree on right now. And the other book I was thinking about is, and this went with something else that Laurel said, it was about, she had the 4-point thing. And there's a book called Nonviolent Communication. And it's by
Marshall Rosenberg.
Marshall Rosenberg.
Yeah,
and,
he has lots of books and programs and workshops around the country.
Right. Well, he's dead now, but
And his
but yeah,
program continues.
and it's observation, feeling, need, request. But you can still see him on YouTube.
Well, and
Different aspects
there's
of it.
plenty of nonviolent communication classes taught all over.
Really?
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah.
Wow, what do you know?
And what my understanding of that, what Marshall Rosenberg wants to get at, what is your need? You're upset about this, but I want to get to what's underlying your basic need, and then I can address that.
Yeah. Uh-huh. Yeah. In my opinion, part of it, I say to clients, if you think about it, usually when we want something from somebody, we march up to them and say, I want you to do this. But in his system, the first 3 things you say are about yourself. And then and my philosophy is by the time you get to the 4th thing, if this person cares about you at all, they're already on your side. Anyhow.
And that's the active listening principle again. I'm feeling because, so I'd like to talk about, let's do so-and-so.
Mhm.
Because then if it's an I message, I feel people have empathy with you. But if it's a blaming you message, anybody's being defensive. You always, and that goes nowhere. Thank you. Let's, Raino, you don't want to say anything? We'd love to hear from you. Why don't we wrap up with your final thoughts? Rajni, anything that you would like to add that you think is really important?
Yeah, I mean, when everyone was talking about conflict, another thing that came to my mind was that how when we are angry, we tend to say things that we don't really mean. I mean, you want to say things to hurt the other person. And, I come from a family where everyone remembers everything. So, so if you're fighting today, since the day you were born, whatever, everything that you said, they would quote it back to you and all that. So, and they take pride in that fact. So I came from that background when I came with Sandeep. I mean, he taught me that, things said in anger are things said in anger. So they should be seen in that context. So now, I mean, he never quotes, what I said back to me. And he says, I'll forget it the next day. So now I also try to forget it the next day, what he said to me. So that, quoting back that, you said this, then, and this, that, at that time. So that really escalates a situation because it piles up all the, all the rest of the conflicts in addition to the present one, making it something bigger than what it actually is. While if you can, remove the backlog of probably unresolved or resolved conflicts, then it becomes easier to see it in context and resolve it smoothly and, at a faster pace. So things said in anger should be seen as things said in anger only and forgotten as soon as possible.
Why don't we end with you and the other couples on glue? What are the fun times? What are the bonds? Masters and Johnson said pair bonding is based on the shared memory of good times. That's what holds couples together. So what are your good times that really glue you?
So what glues both of us is that, we help each other be the best version of ourselves, what our goals are, he would help me achieve mine. I have helped him achieve his. And, what we have not been able to do, even to come to terms with that also maybe. And then, we are each other's best friends in the sense that, we can talk to each other about everything and not feel that, we'll be judged on something. And, even dealing with day-to-day stress. Sandeep is that kind, he doesn't like to talk about his workplace or whatever. I would like to talk about it. So it's not as if he would not listen. When I'm, bogged down by something, he would offer advice also, which is something that he's learned to do over the years, knowing that I expect, something from him. So, 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 I think over the years that shared, living together itself, how you have been able to come together as two people. I think that glues you. The good times, the bad times. Last year, I had a very bad time of COVID. I was hospitalized and, I was on oxygen. My lungs were, really down. And there was a time when the point was that probably I may not survive also. So people talk about men not being emotional, but, my kids, my father-in-law, everyone told me that he was crying the whole day. And, what all he has gone through to, make sure that I'm back safe and sound. And when I came back, I was so angry over everything. You didn't do this, you didn't do that. But, poor thing, he just listened to everything. And, knowing that I'm in a fragile physical state helped me recover. And, that was really helpful. So, even difficult times together are a big glue for us. This was just one, so.
And
I think
also you've had some really nice trips as a family, vacations,
Yeah.
holidays.
Yes, holidays, of course. Yeah, they are very helpful. I mean, like I said, that, when you have tough careers and, you are busy all the time, it's very important that you take a break and, go together where you can just leave everything behind and, just be together. So that helps.
I asked a bunch of teenagers, hundreds, about happy memories as a family, and number one was definitely family holidays, because you're focused on each other and you're having a good time.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to going on 16th.
Where are you going?
We're going to a hill station in North India. It's called Mukteshwar. Mukteshwar, yeah. So my kids and all of my daughter's exams, she has her board exams. She's in class 12th. Her exams are getting over on 15th, and on 16th we are going so that we can take a break. And
I know those boards are a big deal, really a big deal.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Steve, let's go to you. What about glue that holds the marriage together, and any other last thoughts?
Well, it's funny that because there was that bit about people being opposites, and I think Laurel and I are not opposites. We're both like the oldest children, and so I don't know. We've always had this emotional, intellectual, physical attraction to each other, and that's still there. But yes, travel with the family and so on. I mean, that's definitely a major thing. But we also have interests that are different. Like I'm interested in languages and music, and she has other interests, but we also have shared things.
Yeah, that makes it interesting. Right. Okay, so Robin and Jim, what about you? Glue?
Well, sorry about Jim. He has something that he has to go to, and he's probably gone to the men's room. So I'll just say thank you. First of all, thank you, Gayle, for having this forum, and thanks for everybody for coming. And I had put it on my GT network listserv in Georgia, so maybe that's why there were some.
That's why we got
Planet therapists that joined us. But
Yes,
thanks
thank you.
everybody for coming. The glue that keeps us together, one is the friendship. And as you said also, Steve, you know, we don't have all the same interests. We have varying interests, but some are the same. And we definitely have the same values and the same spirituality. Not that we worship the same exactly, but that we have those values together. We go back and forth to India, so that's something that we love to do. And we come back and forth to Myrtle Beach. There's a spiritual center here that we also, and just the friendship, the spiritual values, and we laugh. We have a shared sense of humor, and we can be funny about things. So if things are too heavy, you know, and too, you know, one of us will say something to the other, maybe some smart comment or, you know, something like that, that gets us laughing. And of course, kisses and hugs are always good. And our wonderful mentor and friend Bauji, who, when we were going through a really rough time, gave us, he said, 5 kisses the first day, 7 kisses the second day, 9 kisses the third day, and then you have 1 day off. And then you start again. So it was, and he said to me that I should forgive him, which I guess I was holding some resentment. And he said to Jim that he should meditate on me. So it just, you know, is kind of a funny, light thing, but it shifts your focus.
And
And
Jim, we're ending with glue that holds the relationship together. Fun.
I know, she just said it pretty well. I mean, you know, the glue, wow. I'm just thinking we've had so much support that has helped us keep the glue together from various sources. But I think probably some important things are, there's a certain level of just, you know, being able to take everything in stride and not take it personally. And just care for each other, you know.
Kindness, that's a big.
Kindness. Yeah. But as far as, like, you know, somebody mentioned, like, you know, good times. We have good memories to share. Like, we go to Cape Cod almost every year. We do go to India a lot. We've got lots of friends here in Myrtle Beach. Real strong community. You know, brings good memories and keeps us going. You know.
Great.
So,
and children and our grandchildren and all. Yeah.
Good. Thank you all. Really profound. I hope this helps a lot of people who tune in and see it on YouTube, and I'll send you the link. So thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Gayle. It was
My
lovely,
pleasure.
lovely meeting all of you.
thank you.
And nice to meet everybody. And when we come to India, we're in Maharashtra. We're in Mehrabad, Ahmednagar, Pune, Mumbai, Pune.
Lovely. Do get in touch. You know, I'm in Delhi, so anytime you come to Delhi, I mean, do meet.
Occasionally we fly through Delhi on the way to Pune.
Or you can get in touch. I mean, Gayle, you can take my mail ID from Gayle, and, you know, I can give you my phone number if you want.
Okay. Yes.
We can meet up, chat up anytime. Yeah.
Okay.